So shifting gears a bit, I want to turn our attention to the GRIDSMART Hall of Fame. So you may have seen the plaques in the entryway into the auditorium. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to take a look at them, read the inscriptions, and the GRIDSMART Hall of Fame, it represents good people that GRIDSMART has had the honor of getting to know over the years that have been both inspiring and influential to us. People that we truly admire and that we think of fondly. So right now on that wall, you'll see Jack Herbert III, Kirk Stottle, and Darrell Cherry. We added a plaque yesterday for our founder, Bill Malkus. This morning, we're announcing our latest inductee. For those of you who know him or know of him, it should come as no surprise, especially now that he's not a board member and we can do this after our acquisition. So I was trying to decide how I could summarize his accomplishments and awards. And to put it in perspective, I can virtually guarantee you there will be an award named after him someday. And honestly, I was surprised there wasn't yet. I had to go, is there one? Do you know of one yet? Okay. So with almost no embellishment, that list of awards and accomplishments is so long. We were thinking of adding a 64th training session to cover them all. That said, he's also our next speaker, so I am going to introduce him and take a crack at an intro. Randell Iwasaki began his career at the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, in 1983, culminating in 2009. He received the Charles H. Purcell Award for Managerial Excellence at Caltrans, given by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO as we like to call it. He is a recipient of the Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers Award given by Government Technology Magazine. So Randy is currently the Executive Director of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority in the Bay Area, where he manages over $3 billion of transportation projects and programs, and is the founder of the Go Minimum Autonomous Vehicle Testing Station. So looking through the awards, I also noted this year that Randy received the Beaver's 2019 Golden Beaver Award for Engineering. The Beavers is a heavy engineering construction association, and I have to say their website was really cool, the pictures on the website. So if you haven't seen the beavers.org and look, just seeing those projects under construction is really cool. So I just take a look at that. So I thought that was a really neat one. So our founder, Bill Malkus, created the GRIDSMART Hall of Fame, and I'm going to quote, "To commemorate the protagonists who exemplify the GRIDSMART way in the spirit of their work, the honesty of their actions, and their love of community." So the inscription on Randy's plaque reads, "For a lifetime of continuous improvement and innovation on behalf of the citizens of California." So it's GRIDSMART's great honor to welcome to the stage and into the GRIDSMART Hall of Fame, Randy Iwasaki. Here's a photo op we're going to do. All right.
Well, it's a great honor. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, GRIDSMART family, for the honor. I really appreciate it. It's not just for me. I had a team at Caltrans, and I have a team at CCTA that helps deliver transportation innovations. And in order to do innovation, you have to get your teams to buy into that. And so I'm going to run you through a slide deck. I think it's going to take about 29 minutes. And hopefully then we'll have time for questions. But if you have questions, please raise your hand. So I work for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. We're a sales tax authority. And in California, we have 25 out of 58 counties that use sales tax to fund transportation. And so if you think about a pie chart of transportation funding, 12% in California comes from the federal government, 23% comes from the state government, 65% from local agencies. And so it's a very prolific way of raising revenues. Los Angeles County just passed the sales tax measure. It's forever, 2 cents. It generates $120 billion over the first 40 years. So there's a proposal in our county to pass another sales tax measure on top of our existing half cent that'll raise about $3.6 billion. So as a little agency of 20 employees, we'll manage about $5 billion worth of projects and programs over the next 35 years. We're also the congestion management agency for our county, so we measure congestion at about 140 different locations throughout our county, and we do that to make sure our investments are paying dividends. So if you're not doing that, you might want to think about doing that or making that part of your equipment, is to make sure you're measuring congestion so you can feed that back to the owner and talk about congestion relief. And lastly, Momentum Station, the largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So how many of you don't know where Contra Costa is? It's that little white dot there in the left slide. We're one of the 9 Bay Area counties, so we're just to the east of Oakland. We're about 38 miles away from SFO, San Francisco Airport. We're a population of about 1.2 million people. We'd be the 43rd largest state of the union, just ahead of Rhode Island, just behind New Hampshire. We have a thriving economy in our county. My board asked me, wherever I go in the world to speak, that I talk about who we are and what we do, so I've just done that. This is what we do. So if you see a board member, please tell them you know what we do now. So it's pretty comprehensive. We actually take and do construction from the planning, the environmental clearance, the design, and the construction in our county. So whereas here it would be Tennessee DOT working on the interstate, overseeing construction, in our county we oversee it. So we contract out about 95% of our work. Typically our projects come in ahead of schedule and under budget. We take those dollars and we invest them in the next project. So we're not widening a lot of freeways. We're widening Interstate 680 right now to build HOV lanes, southbound direction only. We're getting a lot of complaints. I've forgotten the complaints that owner-operators get during construction. How many of you are owner-operators? Cities, any cities? Yeah, so you get a lot of complaints. I've forgotten, so now I'm not going to do construction anymore. It's ridiculous. And they want noiseless, dustless. They want this stuff done overnight. You want to widen 10 miles of freeway and knock all the retaining walls out, put new retaining walls, no noise. So if you figure that out, let me know, because I'll go ahead and work with you on that for sure. But these are the strategies that we use to try to figure out how to deal with congestion. When we poll our public, because we poll our public quite often, because when you want to pass a sales tax measure, you have to know what they want. 3 years ago, it was potholes. Today, it's congestion, 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 a better BART. That's our subway system, cleaner, safer. Those are the things. They want traffic light synchronization, adaptive signals in the future. That's what our public wants. So we're working on that. So we're in the midst of a mobility revolution in our county, in our state, probably in our nation. And so we're bullish on the autonomous vehicle for these reasons. Safer, they refuse to crash, so your roadways are going to get safer. If you have less crashes, your transportation system is going to get more efficient. Your air quality is going to get better as you transition from fossil fuel vehicles. And lastly, we can get to the underserved portions of our communities, the people that we have typically not served very well in the past. People that are disabled, elderly like me, and/or because I can't walk as fast as I used to, and then also the people that choose not to own a car or can't afford a car. So I think this technology has a great opportunity to help us provide better service to everybody. So we're also changing the way we plan the future. If you're not doing that at a city, you might want to think about, or your county and/or the state. Transportation technology is changing the way we model the future. So if cars refuse to crash, congestion will be less potentially. You get more cars per lane per hour. If you don't model that in the future, so your long-range plans go out 30, 40 years, your capital improvement programs are developed based on those long-range plans. So think about Uber and Lyft. So Uber and Lyft 5 years ago burst on the scenes. If you own a city, you're going to rehabilitate Main Street. You should think about modifying that built environment to accommodate the next generation of technology. How many of you use Uber and Lyft? Okay, so you're in Washington, D.C., you use Uber and Lyft. So you hail an Uber or Lyft, they come and pick you up. Typically, they don't park right next to the curb, they double park. So when I was looking back one day, I saw all these people waving at me, and I thought, wow, how's it going? Turns out they're not waving at me. They're using some other sign language. I didn't really understand what it was, but apparently they're upset with me for getting an Uber and Lyft. That's what you have to think about. Technology is going to change the way we approach our built environment. Think about that for the future, because I'm going to retire one of these days, and I'm going to depend on you to provide service when I come in and visit your communities. So, changing the way we plan the future. We're changing the way we model the future. So think about that. So there was a study done by the National League of Cities of the 68 major metropolitan areas in the United States, one from each state plus 18 more. 6% had Uber and Lyft identified in their long-range plans, 3% autonomous and connected vehicles. Once again, the capital improvement programs are developed based on your long-range plans. Climate change is a big issue in California. I know it's not in Washington, D.C. right now, but it's still in California, and we have goals to meet. So we have an 80% reduction goal of greenhouse gases from 1990 levels by the year 2050. So we've modeled the future. So we need a 57% zero-emission fleet turnover, whether it's hydrogen fuel cell and or electric battery-powered vehicles. We got to clean our air for our kids. And so we know we need a 57% zero-emission fleet turnover with a slight reduction in VMT. There's only, per capita, there's only 2 times in the history of the United States where VMT dropped. Jimmy Carter when the oil embargo, and then the Great Recession. So we have a daunting task ahead of us, at least in our county in California, to reduce VMT, vehicle miles traveled. So we're trying to figure that out. So then we have an electric vehicle master plan. We got to support those vehicles if we're going to have 57% fleet turnover. So Momentum Station is the largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed in the United States. It's 5,000 acres. It's about the 5th the size of San Francisco. We've signed agreements with various countries throughout the world. We just signed a 4-country agreement with the country of Singapore, Australia, the country of New Zealand, and the country of Contra Costa. That was a joke. I'm unsure if Singapore is really a country. I know we are. So goals of Momentum Station: job creation. We're jobs poor, employee rich in Contra Costa County. So people get up in the morning sometime around 6 o'clock. They head southbound on 680. They're headed to Silicon Valley. For some reason, at 5 o'clock in the evening, they all want to get off at the same time. They head north on 680. So the delay on 680 is about 30 minutes. It's slated to go to 100 minutes if we don't do something in that corridor, because all the people are leaving at the same darn time. San Francisco, 24. Stay about 24, same thing. People get up at the same time in the morning. They go home at the same time in the evening. It's crowded. So we want efficient mobility, so if your cars refuse to crash, your system's going to get more efficient. So you want that technology. Far too many people are killed in the United States each year on our roadways, and we just accept that. So 40,000 people are killed. 2 737 MAX 8s go down. What do? They ground the entire fleet. We have 40,000 people killed on our roadways every year, and nobody's grounding the fleet. So enhanced safety and healthier environments. So we're really excited about that future. These are some of the improvements. If you've been to Momentum Station, when we first started, the saying was, where do you want your self-driving vehicles tested? On brand new pavement, or pavement that looks not reflective of all of the United States, but some roads aren't in the best shape, some striping's not there. And so those vehicles have to be able to maneuver and navigate throughout the grid, this transportation grid, regardless of the condition of the roadways. And so we're testing that out at Momentum Station. We fog sealed some of the pavement to make it look blacker so your striping contrasts better. And so we've got lane drops, bike paths. So we're testing various scenarios with the vehicles now. So this is a propaganda, I just want to say, but it's a good one. It's about Signal Lab.
V2X technology can benefit communities in many ways. With the ability to communicate with vehicles on the road, traffic signals can give priority to vehicles like buses and ambulances. In this scenario, when the bus approaches the intersection, the onboard unit in the bus sends a signal to the roadside unit. The roadside unit directs the controller to change the traffic light from red to green to give the bus passage. Getting mass transit vehicles through intersections faster can keep them on schedule and encourage more public use. In another scenario, as the bus approaches the intersection, V2X technology extends the green light longer than normal to let the bus pass. In the case of emergency vehicles, this capability can save time and potentially save lives. V2X technology provides important benefits to the community, but testing the technology can be challenging. Cities use live intersections or vacant parking lots for testing, which has limitations. In October 2019, AAA Northern California, Nevada, and Utah is launching a brand new V2X lab at Momentum Station, the largest connected and automated vehicle proving ground just outside of San Francisco. This V2X lab will expand across 5 intersections and will be equipped with advanced traffic signal equipment such as controllers, DSRC, and CV2X devices. With controllers from all major vendors covering 95% of the market, Momentum's V2X Lab is your one-stop shop for repeatable testing of interoperability, range, and response time in a safe and controlled environment.
This lab is going to benefit traffic engineers, developers, innovators, equipment manufacturers, and we're excited about the possibilities that we're launching here today. So this partnership between the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, AAA, and Momentum Station will result in safer roadways in the future, and we're very excited about that.
So your top priority is safety, so is ours, and I think that's what we're trying to do at the Signal Lab. So it's testing optical readers right now. It's going to ultimately go V2I using either 5G, 4G, and or DSRC. A lot of partnerships with influencers, so NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I've got some slides on that, but there's a lot of strong partnership out at Momentum Station. These are some of the partners. If you don't see your logo on here, you can always call up, and I have my card, and we can start talking about forming a partnership. So mobility as a service. How many of you have not heard of mobility as a service? Anybody? A couple years ago, nobody heard about mobility as a service or mobility on demand. And so we have a congestion problem. If you've been in the Bay Area, this is Interstate 80 heading westbound towards San Francisco, and you have a lot of weaving. And this weaving, they affectionately call this the maze, because you're going all over in both directions, and it is a nightmare. But people do it every day. So you'll come off of Powell and you'll weave across 7 lanes and you'll head north or south onto 580 and or 880. It's a mess, or you're going to San Francisco. So mobility as a service, we didn't plagiarize this. We actually copied somebody's, but we changed a few words, so technically it's ours now. And so, but you can read it. The point is, it's a public-private transportation service. It's personalized to you, the person that wants to use it, provides end-to-end service. So we have a super secret kind of a proposal that we're working on right now. We call it Project Olympics, and the reason why we use Project Olympics is because in 1984, LA hosted Olympics. Peter Ueberroth was the chairman. He said, we're going to have a mode shift. In order to survive in Los Angeles, we have to put people in another mode of transportation or scare them away from Los Angeles during that 1 month long event, and it worked great. They actually copied it in Atlanta, Georgia. Worked great. Why can't we do that on a daily basis? Why can't we figure that out? So we've actually set a goal of 10%. It's probably too high, but you have to have a goal. And so millennials are rethinking car ownerships. That's an opportunity one. They're getting less driver's licenses. So when I turned 16, I was first in line. I remember that day very well. My dad and I were there. I got my driver's license for my car. Then I came back. We used to have a Honda 55 Sports Cub, a real small motorcycle. And I got my motorcycle's license. You had to drive around in circles. There was a guy who had a Harley with big ape-hanger handlebars. He couldn't pass the test. And he watched me as I buzzed around, and I know he wished he had a Honda 55 Sports Cub. So you got a reduction in driver's licenses. And people, when your kids come out of college, a lot of times, unless you're paying for their college, they got debt. So they analyze everything very closely about costs. And what they found about vehicles is they're expensive. They depreciate. They're an asset that is parked 95% of the time. And so what they want is different alternatives. And so they're starting to look at, what are the alternatives? And I think for an automobile manufacturer, shared mobility is going to be a big issue for them in the future. And you heard Bill Ford saying, we're a mobility company, we're not a car manufacturer. So they're starting to think about this. It's a great opportunity to leverage that thought process. And I mentioned this before, accessibility for the underserved portions of our community. So the Bay Area MOS, we got a grant from USDOT. It was a competitive grant from the Trump administration to California. It was $8 million. We competed with 50 or so other agencies throughout the United States. We were one of 10 allocations. There were 8 state departments of transportation. There was 1 University of Alabama, and I call ourselves a pea shooter-sized organization of 20. So we won one of the $8 million grants. That's our partners. This is the concept. So what you have is you're going to have a platform in the future. You want to go from point A to point B, and you don't want to drive or you don't want to walk. And so you're going to get all your assets. What you have on the bottom there is all your assets: car sharing, bicycles, and I have a slide deck on, or at the end, of micromobility. But those are all the options. It's analyzed by the platform, and out pops a service: uniform payment, connection protection, trip planner, scheduling, incentives and rewards. Are any of you using incentives and rewards to try to get people to carpool? So we'll pay you $2 in our county to carpool. We're looking at signed an agreement with a company called Miles. What they do is kind of like your frequent flyer miles. So they track what options you're taking. So if you're taking a BART or you're walking, you get 10 times a mile. And so you trade those miles in for half off a Starbucks coffee, and or you'll get a 25% discount on Cole Haan shoes. The latest one we're trying to sign is with a company based out of New Zealand that when you look at your advertisements through their application, you're going to get money, the company's going to get money, and the transit operator is going to get money because people aren't looking at their television screens as much as they used to for advertising. So they're trying to start pushing the advertisements through your cell phone. You might want to think about that. So that's mobility as a service. These are the benefits of mobility as a service. So most recently, and by the way, we got notified of that previous allocation from the USDOT on April Fool's Day, so we thought really it was a joke, but it turned out it wasn't. So this is our automated driving system grant. We made the application. We just recently learned that we've got the application. I think we were the first agency in California to test on public streets with a level 4 vehicle. Las Vegas beat us nationwide, but we're still the only operator that hasn't been hit by a truck yet, so we're in pretty good shape. So the AES Grant Program, these are the components of the AES grant. So the first one is Rossmore. So Rossmore is a gated community. They own the roads. We're going to run 6 of these vehicles, shared autonomous vehicles, seats 6, it stands 6 more, in tandem around the facility. The idea is to get your grandmother or your grandmother's grandmother out of their vehicle because they're not very good drivers anymore. And so let's figure that out. And then we're going to bring County Connection into that retirement community and make the handoff so that they don't have to walk across the street to Safeway, which they're not doing, and then taking the County Connection into Walnut Creek and or to BART to go into San Francisco to watch a show. We want to make end-to-end mobility for the senior citizens. We'll pick them up at their doorstep, get them out of those cars. Second one is we have a high absentee rate at our county hospital. Typically around a county hospital, the attendees they don't have Kaiser or Blue Cross, Blue Shield, those kinds of insurances. They have Medicare, Medi-Cal. And so one of their excuses of why they don't see the doctors, they don't have good mobility. Paratransit doesn't work for them. And so we're trying to solve that problem using a minivan with self-docking wheelchair technology to start, and then retrofit that minivan to make it ADS, automated driving. And lastly, solve the answer, or at least come up with a better answer of how many autonomous vehicles can drive on a single lane in tandem, and then what do you need to support that technology in the future along an interstate system. So micromobility, you're going to have a speaker on micromobility. I apologize for putting this in there. I didn't want to, maybe he or she's going to say things that I'm not saying or that they're going to contradict us, and that's fine. But this is the definition of micromobility. Do you have micromobility in your communities? Yeah. So sometimes they're a real pain for you as managing the infrastructure. These are the various types: docking, self-docking. These are the benefits that we found. We had an intern this summer that did a study on the benefits of micromobility. It can provide a first and last mile solution, assuming you want to take it, because we have a first and last mile issue. How do you get from your house to the transit stop, and then the transit stop to your place of employment, and vice versa, or to have lunch? So that, in a nutshell, is micro-mobility. Thank you very much for listening. It's 2020. Sorry, the slide deck's not quite right there. But we have a Redefining Mobility Summit every year, and it's on March 10th of next year. So thank you. It only took 24 minutes, sorry. I thought it was 29. Any questions? Yes?
About the micromobility, I was in Denver a while ago. Are you familiar with the results that they had in Denver? Have you heard about those? I'm curious. It seemed to work in Denver. I'm just curious if you'd seen any studies of what happened downtown Denver.
No, but we had Lyft, or we had Lime bikes. The Lime bikes are spread out all over Walnut Creek, and so they didn't renew the contract. So what's happening, we're looking at a company called Neuron. Neuron geofences if you're a golfer? No. So if you're a golfer, there's certain areas when they have geofencing around certain areas you can't take a golf cart. Right. Same thing with these scooters. They'll put a beacon in the shrub saying you can only park here to disengage. So they're trying to make it in a more orderly fashion. They were one of 2 competitors in Brisbane or one of two allocations in Brisbane, and they had never been in Australia, and they made a presentation. The country loved them, and now they're rolled out in Brisbane. So there's an option there. I don't know what's happening in Denver, but the technology companies are getting smarter. So if you initially got into micromobility, you might want to take a look at the next generation because it's getting smarter and smarter.
I have a question about parking. We were talking this morning about how legislation that's still left from the 50s and 60s requires so much parking for residential and office. Is some of that starting to change where we can allow less parking to make better use of real estate?
Yeah, so our partner at Bishop Ranch in San Ramon that rolled this red vehicle out, two of them, he actually paid for two. He would tell you that he has the least amount of parking per employee of anybody around because he paid for express bus service initially back in the 90s where he brings in his employees from the two BART stations, Walnut Creek and Dublin, in express buses in the morning. The problem is they deadhead back in the morning. And you have all these people in San Ramon that live in the suburbs that would take those express buses, but he doesn't want them parking in the parking structures. And so if you could start doubling up and getting people out, your parking actually becomes more prevalent and less impactful on your using transit. And so they're starting to look at a different ratio of parking per square footage of the businesses. Yes. Yeah, there's a guy named Professor Shoup from UCLA, The True Cost of Free Parking. It's a good book. You ought to read that, yeah. The True Cost of Free Parking. Yes?
I know the fellow distributors in the room right now aren't going to like this because it's not good for our business. But the initiative that we've been hearing about for years, or I've been hearing about for years anyways, as far as split shifts with work environment to relieve some congestion, are you doing anything with that? Are any of your groups working on that with businesses to try to offset? Because you brought up a great point where at 5 in the morning, everybody goes south on 680, and then at 5 in the afternoon, everybody goes north on 680. So you're doing what most agencies are doing, which is adding pavement, adding real estate. But that's also kind of contradicts, societal ways of what we're doing as far as employment. Do you folks do anything with that?
Yeah, so we don't because we're under 50, but if you're over 50, there's some transportation demand management strategies, including split your work hours, starting later, starting earlier, or telecommuting from home. So that's been around for a long time. But we have a 7-pronged approach at dealing with congestion on Interstate 680. The HOV lane, express lane, so we're starting to price, not Jeff Price, but starting to price the lanes, so tolling. So we're going to build the HOV lanes inside shoulders, northbound, southbound. The problem northbound is there's a giant BART column in the way, so we've got to either move it or move around it somehow. So that's an issue. But we also want to put buses on shoulders, so we want to make the express buses during peak hour when traffic drops below 35 miles an hour, the express buses, instead of weaving across going 35 miles an hour in the HOV lane, they move to the outside lane on the interstates, it's 10 feet, and then run on the outside lane. And so that's another strategy. We want to get the corridor ready for the future. We want to put adaptive ramp meters in. That's for your business. In order to do that, we have to do that because you're going to have to hold the on-ramp traffic as the buses clear the shoulder. And so we're trying to prepare the corridor for the future. We have an RFP that's just been signed with Kimley Horn to make a mobility hub so that handoff between modes. So whereas, you get that waving in the back, you don't have to have that anymore because we want to have a really nice handoff between bus and the various types of mobility. So we're not just dealing with the pavement. We are, in this case, I'm glad I won't be here when we do northbound because of all the complaining. People are really whiners at the end of the day, in my opinion. We're not trying to drive steel pile at night. We try to do it during the day, but they still complain about the noise. But yes, so they're trying to split work hours. I won't do that. I'm not a fan of 410s and 980s, so my team, they don't get to do that because when we have meetings, it's a pain if your people aren't there. But they are doing that in California still. And they get credit for that. Yes?
What is your implementation and adoption strategy for mobility as a service?
So our pilot, we've agreed to roll out along Interstate 680 in 1 year. Our chief partner is BART. So everything revolves around the Bay Area Rapid Transit. It's our subway system. So all the feeders are going to go into that. So it's County Connection, Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority. And we want to run the pilot in 1 year along Interstate 680. Year 2 is going to be in our county. So we have Tri-Delta, we have about 6 different transit operators, AC Transit coming in from the north, from San Francisco, Oakland. We have County Connection, West Cat going into San Francisco, and then Tri-Delta Transit in the east and County Connection in the central. So we want to coordinate all that in our county, and the third year is roll it out in the 9 Bay Area county.
So all modes of mobility would be included in that deployment?
Yes, but what you're going to find is that a lot of the companies don't want to share data. So you're going to have to go and really push hard. So for us, we have Momentum stations, so a lot of the partners want to test at Momentum station because there's nowhere else really like that to test. And so we make them sign agreements that you'll share data, and then we point to that afterwards. So Uber, Lyft, they're testing out at Momentum station. They're part of the partnership, and they don't like to give data away that prevalently. And then you got the micromobility companies. You know, you got to know where they are, what it costs. The other problem we have is, and it's uniform payment, if I failed to mention that, but you don't want to pull out your credit card, your smartphone, your Clipper card, and then something else and something else to take a ride. And you just want to pay once. And you can do that if you can use MasterCard or Visa concepts and just will pay all the vendors. So all that's being analyzed, but the data part's going to be hard because they don't like to share data. But that's the 3-year plan. That's what we agreed to USDOT. We're very close to getting our notice to proceed. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and we'll share information because we promised USDOT we'd do that, share data. I think that's important for all of us. Great question.
I have a question. As a marketing and communications professional, you talked about how you plan to market the Miles program that you spoke about through social media and online. But some of these services you were speaking of, like mobility as a service for the elderly, they don't use some of these applications. So do you have a plan of how to communicate some of these programs with the general public?
Yes, that's great. So we assume everybody has a cell phone, and there have been studies that have shown that almost everybody has a cell phone. But let's assume for the talking purposes, not everybody has a smart device. So in the case of senior citizen centers, a lot of times they have a community center area where they can go and log on. And so the plan is to make sure it's not just on a smartphone, but you can capture the information and the application on a computer in the center of the retired community. That's why we're trying to get Rossmore. Rossmore has no money. So I'm telling them, because the USDOT wants you to leverage their, in this case, $7.5 million allocation to CCTA. And we're saying, be creative. The access to your facility is worth $1 million. The roadways are worth $500,000, whatever the number is. But the point is that they don't have any money, but they have a lot of people that need that service. And whether they have a smart device or not, that's going to be a great challenge for us, because we're going to have to figure out, okay, how do we get to you to make sure that you can use it? And let's say you have dementia, so you have to have somebody help you provide that information. And so we want to customize the service ultimately so that people, if you need an attendant, and a certain type of attendant, that's that wheelchair application at the Haas County Hospital. Tell us what you need, and we'll provide that help to you, because we want you to see the doctor, because if you don't see the doctor when it's a minor issue and it becomes a major issue, it just costs society more money anyway. So let's spend the money up front and get them care. In the case of advertising, we want to do marketing. So Lindsay Willis is our Director of External Affairs. She's fantastic. She's helped us in many, many ways of dealing with the public and making sure we provide information. So she's part of that team to make sure that we get the word out. But if you have ideas, let us know. We'd love to test them. Well, I have another 20 minutes, so I can just wait here until I'm... No, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you very much.